103 here on FAN. Jody Mack with you. Richmond Cuso with us. Hello, Richard.
Jody.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
A lot of action going on.
And joining us here tonight on our Wrestling Hour is Steve Mueller, wrestling journalist. He's got some good insights into the WWF situation. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jody. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. Steve,
I'm here on time tonight. No Long Island Railroad.
No problems on the railroad, huh?
Yeah.
You're not listening to FAN enough. Russo will tell you, the Long Island Railroad's the way to go. Not necessarily. Let's talk about the Survivor Series the other night. We'll get into the particular matches in just a bit, but the feature, Hogan versus The Undertaker. Hogan loses with interference from Flair. Undertaker takes the title, but they're going to have a rematch immediately. What do you think of the match? What do you think about the way it was handled? Is Vince McMahon getting the most for his bucks?
Well, we kind of think here that Vince McMahon is kind of losing it finally. First of all, the event itself was kind of distressing because Hogan lost with Ric Flair throwing in a steel chair where The Undertaker did the pile driver onto the chair, which is a kind of a move that Rick Steiner has kicked out of in the last month. It kind of diminishes Hogan's ability, but beyond that, just the whole idea of this event is distressing because fans are going to be tuning in Tuesday night expecting Hogan to regain the title, and the word that I have is Hogan is not going to regain the title, that Hogan may not even be there Tuesday night. Now, there's a number of different scenarios floating around. One is that Roddy Piper will be substituting for Hogan Tuesday night. The other one is that Randy Savage will be substituting for Hogan Tuesday night. And there's a third one that Hogan will show up, he won't regain the title, and that a tournament will be declared for the WWF title. So the best thing we can say about the whole series of events is that nothing is definite, and the entire promotion is in kind of a state of flux.
Now, Steve, I was at the Garden tonight, and everybody heard about the rumor about Piper Tuesday night, and thought Piper would be in there tonight. Now, Hogan comes in and wrestles Flair tonight without the belt, and I got to think that's because they had to keep the promotion going with that match and let the New York Garden fans see it. They hadn't seen it yet. The rest of the country has. Now they're coming back December 29th with a matinee show, and they're going to do Hogan and Flair in a rematch. Now, I got to think that Tuesday night, and I know that you know a little more than me on this one right now, the Tuesday night, Hogan will be there, but the question is, will he get the belt back? And I got to think that they're going to, with Jack Tunney's presence at ringside for the match, that being a stipulation, that he's going to be there, that something's going to go wrong again with Flair's interference, and the belt will be upheld, and we're going into a tournament.
Well, that seems to be the popular opinion, and I kind of agree with it. Well, the WWF, and it's funny because the WWF is in a kind of strange situation because they're in kind of a limbo. Vince McMahon, for the first time, I think perhaps in the last 3 or 4 years, has really backed himself into a corner, and I think he made the wrong move. He built up Ric Flair to be the challenger to the WWF title with, and it's just been working out the way he planned it. The WWF, I think, has mishandled the entire situation with Ric Flair, and now that they're kind of trying to regain what they've lost. And unfortunately for them, I don't think it's possible. What they're eventually going to do, and this we have on pretty good source, is that for WrestleMania from the Hoosier Dome is going to be Hulk Hogan against Ric Flair with the title. Now, however they get to that event is going to be orchestrated by Vince McMahon and the WWF. But the way they're doing it and the way they've handled Ric Flair, instead of turning him into a genuine contender for the title, a genuine outside force, moving into the WWF, moving in as a kind of invincible force from another dimension, he's Bobby Heenan's kind of dopey friend, and it's not working out. Unfortunately, what could have been the biggest wrestling mega event of the 20 years is now turning into a kind of a non-event, with Ric Flair as kind of not even the WCW champion. He's just kind of Ric Flair, the dopey guy with the belt that's being blocked out on ringside.
Now, is there any way that McMahon can recapture the excitement of what could have been a Flair-Hogan matchup at the upcoming WrestleMania? And if he could, how do you think he'd go about it?
Well, Jody, I don't know if he can. I think in one of the few instances of the last 10 years, Vince McMahon blew it. What Ric Flair should have been was this outside destroyer, this significant outside force moving into the WWF, challenging their big guns. What we have now is Ric Flair is part of the Bobby Heenan, Mr. Perfect connection. He's kind of now being relegated as kind of a dopey guy with a figure four leg lock. And as the months roll on, I think that angle is going to be is going to be highlighted more and more. And we're going to lose the effect of having Ric Flair, the outside invader from another promotion, moving into the WWF. We're just going to have another WWF bad guy, Ric Flair, who happens to be the Nature Boy. And as anybody that has watched Ric Flair's matches, they can tell that in the WWF, Ric Flair is not the Ric Flair of the WCW, and certainly not the Ric Flair of the NWA. His matches are nowhere near the level that he competed on in the other promotion. So what we have here is a bad imitation of a WCW great match.
I agree with you. I saw that tonight at the Garden. The way they're doing this match, I mean, I think the fans will agree with me with the Garden tonight, what they saw. The match comes down to Flair putting Hogan in the figure four, and Hogan could hardly move after that, and makes his comeback, but then Flair pins Hogan in the middle of the ring, and then Tony Gurria and another WWF honcho runs in and reverses the decision and gives Hogan the victory because Flair supposedly used brass knuckles to get the pin. It wasn't a match I expected. I saw it for the first time. A lot of fans have seen it twice already. And I don't think the match could draw in the rematch in December.
Well, I think you're right, Rich, and I think that's been the case across the country. Well, the first match between Hogan and Flair, because of the novelty and the matchup of the former WCW champion and WWF champion meeting each other, drew very well. Now it's only drawing half of what it drew the first time, which is really disappointing. And I think the whole reason for that is because of the way the WWF and Vince McMahon in particular has handled Ric Flair. Once again, the WWF has by its, and it's only stupidity, has relegated Ric Flair to the ranks of the challengers. Instead of taking the guy who has been perhaps the number one wrestler in all of wrestling for the last 20 years and turning him to a real force, a real threat to Hulk Hogan, they've relegated him to the ranks of the Warlord and the other characters that roam across the WWF corridors. And unfortunately, what we have, instead of having one of the great matches in wrestling history, we have Ric Flair, who's kind of becoming again a WWF cartoon character, against Hulk Hogan, who's obviously all steroids and all for any real reason for competing on a level that is beyond that of doing a couple of quick moves, a couple of leg drops, and a pin.
Steve, where is Sid Justice fit into this mix? When is he supposed to be back? And can he be the guy who can kind of save them from what they've done as far as mistakes go with Flair Hogan?
Well, Sid Justice is one of those guys. I think history will record that Sid Justice is one of those guys who missed the boat, and he missed it big time. He could have been in there, but just because of the events that have happened in the last couple of months, because he's been out of action, because he couldn't capitalize on the transitions in the two major promotions, he's kind of on the wayside. And now, because of the stories of him confronting WCW wrestlers in bars in Atlanta, etc., with the story about him coming back into a bar after challenging Mike Raymond, returning into the bar with Squeegee to challenge Graham and Brian Pillman, and it's become kind of a joke on the inside of the industry. He's become a joke, and unfortunately, I don't see Sid Justice being anywhere near the character that he could have been if he had just a couple of breaks going his way. Right now, I think the WWF is in a position with Hulk Hogan just about ready to retire within the next 17 months, trying to find someone, and they're desperate. And Vince McMahon, for the first time, I think, since 1983, is really worried because he has nobody.
Well, he could, because the reports we're getting this week that Lex Luger's contract is up in March in the WCW. There's already been indication from what we're getting that Lex Luger could be at WrestleMania for the WWF. Now, you getting the same reports I am on that, Steve?
Yeah, Lex Luger is there's a number of different incidents involved here, but the bottom line is that Lex Luger has kind of distanced himself from the WCW promotion, and he'll be leaving WCW when his contract runs out at the end of February, and he'll be going in probably into the WWF. However, we have to look at Lex Luger. Lex Luger is certainly not another Hulk Hogan. He's not even another Randy Savage. He's a guy with a good body, with some good wrestling skill, who kind of swallows a microphone when he gets in front of it. And he's not going to be the guy that's going to be the rejuvenation of the WWF. Just as Hulk Hogan was Bruno brought to Broadway, Lex Luger is not Hulk Hogan brought to Mars. Lex Luger is not going to do it. But the WWF is looking for, and is going to need, is someone perhaps completely different from these kind of personas. And I don't know. I kind of see a state where wrestling kind of settles out, kind of falls back now. I think that's what we're looking towards.
19 minutes after 3 here on FAN. Jody Mack with Rich Mancuso and Steve Mueller talking about the WWF and the WCW. We'll talk a little bit more about Survivor Series, the rest of the matches, and also what the WCW's got upcoming. All that, here for you on FAN, our wrestling hour on a Saturday night.
Got the hots for sports? Then turn on the Fan and get the scoop. Sports Radio 66, WFAN, New York.
Sports Radio 66, WFAN, New York.
321 here on the Fan. Jody Mack joined by Rich Mancuso and Steve Mueller. Steve, was there anything else on a Survivor Series card that intrigued you at all?
Well, there was a few things going on that I thought were interesting. For instance, the turn of the Rockers. But again, that's something the WCW has been leading up to for the WWF has been leading up to for the last few weeks. And again, they should have just done it or not done it. What they did is kind of left fans up in the air with Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels kind of shoving each other and gesturing towards each other. But what is going to happen, of course, is that the two of them are going to be involved in a feud that will go beyond February, March of next year.
What I found interesting in the Survivor Series was Hacksaw Jim Duggan coming out with Sergeant Slaughter in their match together. And it's obvious why that had to happen, because Slaughter is getting absolutely no pop from the crowd. And the fans haven't accepted that he's a good guy now. And they had to bring him in with Duggan. And I don't think Slaughter is going to be Sergeant Slaughter as a good guy. I think his career is just about over.
Well, Rich and Jody, as you know, there was a number of rumors floating around as to what exactly was going to happen after the Survivor Series show. And kind of everybody agreed that Hogan was going to drop the title, but that the point of contention was exactly what was going to happen on the December 3rd show. And a number of people had said that Sergeant Slaughter was going to come back and be designated to challenge for the WWF title with Hogan being injured. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the fans just have not responded to Hogan's, to Slaughter's turn back towards heroism. In fact, the WWF, which has been in its past for its technique in orchestrating changes in the heel to face conversion has been terrible. And the transition of Sergeant Slaughter from heel to hero. And in fact, the fans are laughing at Slaughter's transition. And in fact, on the recent show, what they did is they brought Slaughter out with Hacksaw Duggan just to avoid the embarrassment of having the whole crowd boo Slaughter. And it's just not working out. And one of the rumors floating around, of course, was that Slaughter was going to be the substitute on the December 3rd show and gain the title for an injured Hulk Hogan. But that's not going to happen just because of the way the fans have not reacted to his change back to heroism. And in a way, this is a good thing because for so many years, the WWF fans have been kind of like Pavlov's dog, barking to whatever Vince McMahon has orchestrated. And now fans are kind of realizing that a lot of this stuff is just a lot of junk.
It's stupid. You're right. I think the only guy who ever pulled it off well in the WWF was probably Orndorff. He was pretty good at changing from one to the other.
Right.
But otherwise, they haven't had guys that could pull it off, and the WWF hasn't orchestrated it well.
Right, and that's exactly it, Jody. And that's it. Orndorff did it well. He did it very well, as a matter of fact. But overall, and what makes wrestling and to wrestling, the casual fan, wrestling you have to be able to suspend your disbelief. You have to be able to look at it and watch it, get involved in it, and suspend your disbelief. But if your intelligence gets so insulted, as it has been by what the WWF has been doing in recent months, then there's no suspension of disbelief. There's not even a suspension of reality. All you can do is look at what's going on and laugh at it.
And how do you see the Savage Roberts situation now?
Well, that whole situation, personally, as a long-time wrestling purist, I kind of look at this whole situation, and it kind of makes me a little ill. But looking at the match itself, you might see a good technical match for about 5 or 6 minutes, but the whole idea of the angle and the whole way it's been promoted is that it'll be a brawl. What we'll see is, for the first match, it'll be a double disqualification. It'll be an outside of the ring thing, and it'll go on for 4 or 5 months, with eventually Savage gaining the decision. But overall, I kind of think this whole thing with the snakes and the intervention of the WWF alleged president Frank Tunney, it's almost insulting to the intelligence of the average fan, because the average fan realizes that this whole thing is just a scenario that's been built to create a situation where Randy Savage battles the Jake the Snake. And what I think is going to happen, and what we've heard is going to happen, is that eventually Jack Tunney, because of the snake situation, because of the reptiles at ringside, is going to sit down, is going to retire, and that Gorilla Monsoon, of all people, is going to become the new WWF president. And along with that, and who knows what else is going to happen as a result of that. But I don't know, myself, and I bet a lot of other fans are tired of hearing Gorilla say to Bobby Heenan, shut up and whatever.
Steve, with the WWF struggling a little bit, now might be the time for the WCW to score some points, and it looks like they already have. Their TV ratings are pretty improved, as I hear.
Yes, they have. And one of the things that WCW has done, and it's to their credit, is to bring in Rick Steamboat. And Rick Steamboat, of course, is perhaps among the top 3 workers in the country in terms of wrestling ability and just in-the-ring technique. They're also bringing Justin Thunder Riga, who is the Japanese non-Perel. He's a tremendous attraction. Also, we've heard, and this hasn't been confirmed, and I can't confirm it, but WCW has been talking with a number of people to replace Jim Herd to bring in somebody else to kind of oversee the promotion.
Well, I've heard Jim Crockett's name all week, that he would take over basically Herd's responsibilities, but Jim Herd would be retained basically just to work on the TV stuff. Well, I think that'd be a good move. I didn't think Jim Crockett was that bad when he ran the NWA.
Well, no. Well, Jim Crockett was, and as fans remember back into the 1987, 1988, Jim Crockett's promotion was one of the best promotions in the history of wrestling. He was good, and not perhaps because of Jim Crockett, but because of the talent he had available and because of the things that were going on at the time. Unfortunately, what happens is that Jim Herd has kind of forced himself into the picture, and of course anyone in the business knows that Jim Herd and wrestling just don't mix. I've also heard, Rich, and I think I mentioned this to you during the week, that other people have been talked about coming in to kind of fill in Jim Herd's spot, and it's still up in the air as to who exactly is going to take over that position. However, I think it's safe to say that Jim Herd is, other than for the most basic responsibilities of wrestling television, is going to be out of the promotion, and that can only be a plus for the WCW.
Maybe a swing of powers in the two major federations in wrestling. Steve, unfortunately, our time has come and gone. We thank you. We're looking forward to hearing from you again real soon.
All right, you take care. Thanks talking to you.
Appreciate it, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
All righty. The 29 minutes after 3 here on the Fan. Mac Man with you, Rich Man with us. QSO, that is. We'll get to your wrestling letters. We got a couple of them here. And then we'll answer your wrestling phone calls at 718-937-6666. 3:30 here, hour and a half to go. LaGoria at 5. Clancy right now. He's got the latest sports update for you. Do me a favor. Keep it where you got it. Minutes in front of 4 here on the Fan. Good morning, everybody. We're in the midst of our wrestling hour and segment with Rich Mancuso. Your telephone call is coming up next. It's 718-937-6666. Well, that's after we get through a couple of letters. Light week in the mailbag this week. JD doesn't have these problems. We're a little light on the wrestling letters. That's good because it means more phone calls for you coming up here on our wrestling hour on the Fan.
You've been thinking about quitting smoking. Now there's a stop smoking technique so effective.
21 in front of 4 here on FAN. Jody Mack and Rich Mancuso going to your letters. Eddie reminded me, that's right, they only had 3 days with which to intake mail here this week, or Thursday and Friday, so we'll probably have a veritable plethora of letters next week when the mailbag is open. Richie, we've only got a couple. Let's get right to them. The first one's, I think it's a decent question, but the letter itself is a little bogus. Where is the racial representation once found in the WWF? What has Vince done with Tony Atlas, Sapphire, Rocky Johnson, S.D. Jones, Coco Beware, Charlie Brown, Slick Kamala, JYD, and Virgil? Why did they all leave Vince? Wouldn't a more equal racial balance help fill those empty seats at the arenas? And supposedly it comes from Reverend Kenneth Johnson, Michigan, yet it's postmarked from New York City.
Well, all I could do is tell Reverend Johnson this. First of all, Virgil's still around, and he's going to be. And for the others, I don't think it has anything to do with racial. It's just coincidental that these men are of Afro-American descent, and they've left the WWF, but been dropped for one reason or the other. Though Coco Beware is still on the contract to work independent and WWF shows. I don't know, it has anything to do with racial representation. It's just a coincidental matter.
Up next is a letter from Jonathan from Colonia, New Jersey. Rich, do you think any members of Demolition will come back to the WWF?
Yes. Well, first of all, Repo Man is in the WWF now. He's a former member of Demolition, and I think the fans will know who I'm referring to. And Crush will be coming back pretty soon. Probably somewhere around January. Expect Crush back, but not as Crush, it's someone else. Demolition will not be formed again. It won't be Demolition. It's just Repo Man and Crush wrestling under different characters.
What are the matches for the pay-per-view on December 3rd and at Starrcade? First of all, on the pay-per-view, we know the main event. Are there going to be any other matches? Is the Savage...
Savage Roberts is another. Yeah, Savage Roberts is another one. And it's only an hour and a half show at like a $12.95 price for the viewers. So again, it's a quick revenue gainer for the WWF. And there aren't that many matches. Other matches on the card are a tag match with DiBiase and Repo Man against Virgil and the Matador Tito Santana. Davey Boy Smith against the Warlord and Bret Hart against the Barbarian for the IC belt. So I think it's going to be more emphasis on the first two, Hogan, Undertaker, and Savage Roberts.
Next letter from our pal Steve Cohen, Fairview, New Jersey. Rich, where are the Barbarian, Paul Roma, and Jimmy Superfly Snuka that haven't been on TV in a while?
Well, Barbarian was on TV yesterday, and that was basically because I think what's going to happen with the Barbarian Warlord is that they'll probably reform and become Powers of Pain again. How they're going to do that, I don't know. I think the WWF is contemplating renewing a match with them and Legion of Doom. Paul Romer's still in the promotion. He's just not wrestling on TV because there's no room for him right now. Jimmy Snuka, the same situation. Jimmy Snuka is doing what Coco Beware is doing. He's wrestling some independent shows to keep busy, but still on the contract with the WWF.
Next up, Matthew from Hempstead. His question is, a few months ago, Norman was sent to Germany for a World Cup in wrestling. What did he do over there?
He did very well. In fact, he did so well that WCW is going to bring him back. And Norman is also working heavy, a lot of independents very heavily.
Okay, Andy the Nose Siegel writes, will SummerSlam 92 be held at MSG?
No, I don't think so. We had 91 there at MSG. And so I don't think
Don't they have a problem with the TV rights at MSG as far as the pay-per-view show goes?
No, they did SummerSlam there this past summer in August. So it's no problem for them at all. I don't know where the site's going to be, but it'll probably be somewhere on the East Coast. They seem to keep SummerSlam on the East Coast.
Okay, our next question I'm going to answer for you. They want to know, are you the same Rich Mancuso that writes for the Bronx City News? No, it's the same Rich Mancuso that writes for the Bronx City News that does the show here with me on FAN.
Yeah, the Bronx News. I am the editor of that paper.
Let us get our priorities in order.
Yeah.
The Pro Boys wish us a happy Thanksgiving, and they've got two questions. If the Ultimate Warrior goes to WCW, what will they name him? Ultimate Warrior, Dingo Warrior, or something completely different?
Well, I don't think it'll be Ultimate Warrior because that's a WWF trademark. His contract is up as of today, December 1st. The 90-day suspension period, believe it or not, is over. A lot of rumors this week that he's been signed, sealed, and delivered, and will end up in the WCW at Starrcade December 29th. I gotta believe that's gonna happen, but I don't think he's gonna be known as the Ultimate Warrior. And that's gonna be another boost for the WCW.
Why is the WCW phasing out Teddy Long? He's a great manager.
I don't think he's a great manager. I disagree with this letter writer. And the phasing him out because Paulie Dangerously is going to be the main and sole manager there in WCW.
Next up, Patricia Thompson from Colts Neck, New Jersey. She writes, is there some sort of problem between the WWF and Brutus the Barber Beefcake? Same person who told me that Brutus would be replacing Jim Neidhart on Wrestling Challenge now tells me that not only will that not be happening, but Vince McMahon wants to cut back on the barbershops and maybe even abandon the whole idea altogether. Really appreciate an answer.
I don't think that's the case. I think what's happened here, Brutus can't wrestle because of the injury 2 years ago, the summer before last, in Tampa, Florida. I think what's happening here is Brutus, they have to find a position for him to keep him happy. He's such a big fan favorite. He'd love to wrestle, but he can't. And they're not going to phase him down. There'll be a job for him, and I think it's going to be in TV. They're rearranging the TV crews, and you could expect more of that to happen when Gorilla Monsoon assumes the role of Jack Tunney.
Here's another good question from Patricia. If Owen Hart comes to WWF next year, will he be teamed with Jim Neidhart, and will he be identified as Bret Hart's brother?
No, well, we'll know him as no Owen Hart, and I'm sure they'll make reference to it on television. They're going to be called the New Hart Foundation, by the way, and you should be seeing that in the next couple of weeks on TV.
Okay, Kevin LeGates from New Britain, Connecticut's got a question. Rich, do you know the exact reason why Survivor Series was moved from Milwaukee's Bradley Center to Detroit's Joe Louis Arena? Was it due to poor ticket sales?
No, it had something to do with the TV in that market. It also had to do with a conflict of another thing in the arena.
Okay, and last but not least, Glenn Rossi. When Hulk Hogan finishes feuding with Ric Flair, who will Hogan wrestle next, or will he continue to wrestle?
That's the question everybody seems to want to know that we don't know. I believe Hogan is going to hang around a little while longer because the movies aren't working out properly for him. I think he's calling the shots in this whole matter, too. I think Hogan is determining where they go with him. He's making the decision. I believe he's going to be around, like Steve said earlier, at least 17 more months.
Sports Radio
11 minutes in front of 4 here on The Fan. Jody Mack and Rich Mancuso taking your wrestling calls at 718-937-6666. We're going to try and get as many calls as we can. We've only got 10 minutes, so pick out your best question and have it ready. We're going to try and move right along here. John from Connecticut, you're on with Rich.
Hey, good morning, guys.
How are you?
Two very, very quick things.
Okay.
Steiner's contracts.
Yeah.
How long will they be in WCW?
I believe that WWF is eyeing them, and I will go on the line and say that they will be in the WWF within the year, sometime in 92.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Now, just one thing about Flair. I've got to disagree with you guys about Flair on how the WWF is mistreating him. I think he's being treated better than any other guy who's come into the Federation. But I do think the match, I saw the match tonight, and I thought it was terrible. It wasn't worth the effort. But I hope Sid Justice wears the belt from WrestleMania or SummerSlam next year.
John, he might be being treated better than any other wrestler that's come in, but I still don't think he's getting the kind of treatment Ric Flair deserves because he comes in under different circumstances than anybody else who's ever come into the WWF before. Billy from Brooklyn, you're on FAN. Well, Rich Mancuso.
Yeah, I heard a week ago that Jack Tunney would be involved with a scandal about this whole Undertaker-Hogan thing.
Yeah.
Is there any truth to that?
That could happen Tuesday night. See, he's going to be at ringside Tuesday, and he's making all these controversial decisions right now that are very important to WWF matters. I think what's going to happen, the eventual thing is that if you watch the Survivor Series and listen to the commentary very carefully, Gorilla Monsoon will be the next president of WWF.
Okay, thank you.
Billy, thanks for the call. Terry from Brooklyn, you're next on The Fan.
Hi, how you doing, guys?
Good.
I got one quick question. Tell me something. If the WWF would have stuck with the Ultimate Warrior from the time he won the title till now, do you think they'd be in the predicament they're in, looking for somebody to replace Hogan?
The reason that he's not there doing what he wanted is because the Ultimate Warrior thought he was Hulk Hogan, but he wasn't. He had the title one time and didn't prove, specifically in their major markets, that he could be the Hulk Hogan. So they had to look elsewhere. That's why they went out and got Sid Justice. Unfortunately, he got injured. But the Ultimate Warrior was not a Hulk Hogan. He didn't have the charisma. Yeah, he was popular. I'm not saying he was popular, but he wasn't Hulk Hogan. So that's that.
Terry, thanks for the call. Todd from Ohio joins us here on The Fan. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Jody. Rich, I want to know if Mr. Wrestling 2 ever got unmasked.
Not to my knowledge. No, I don't think he has.
And what's he doing today?
He's semi-retired, and occasionally does some wrestling in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
But semi-retired.
All right, and who won the Ric Flair match in the Survivor Series?
Well, Ric Flair was declared the winner because everybody was counted out of the ring, so he was the sole survivor, and they made him the winner, which was another, I thought that was a bad match, the first match of the show. I don't think they should have done it that way. They should have had one-on-one going in there. It could have been Piper against Flair, but they did it the other way.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Derek from Brooklyn, you're on FAN with Rich Mancuso.
Hi, good morning. I'd like to know if the Warrior goes to WCW, what will be his role?
I think the role is, and also pending on Lex Luger's situation, that he would go into the media feud with Lex Luger. And then there's always a chance that he could team up with Sting and revive that old tag team from Florida, the Blade Runners. But I think what will happen is that he'll come in right away, challenge Luger, and depending on Luger's contract situation, even get the belt.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you for the call. Let's check in with, I believe it's Pete from Secaucus' turn. Hi, Pete, you're on FAN.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, Pete.
I'm just curious. I listen to Wrestling Radio in Philadelphia occasionally on Saturday mornings. You got Tri-State Wrestling?
Yes, Joe Goodon.
And he claims that the Warrior is out of wrestling for good. And this morning I heard him say that the Warrior was HIV positive. Do you guys have any knowledge of that stuff?
The rumors are that he's HIV positive, that he's out of wrestling. We've tackled this issue for a few weeks on and off. And, you know, it hasn't been confirmed. I haven't talked to the guy. I'm getting secondhand information, so I can't say a guy's HIV positive out of secondhand information.
Sure, because you would think he would just go to the WCW where the money is certainly there.
Yeah, but the story we're getting from the WWF is that the Ultimate Warrior left the WWF, or they let him go, instead of putting him on the suspension thing, because he wanted to get paid to what Hulk Hogan was getting paid. He's working the same amount of dates almost, and he wanted to get that same type of salary. And they didn't go for it, so he walked out, or they suspended him.
But you've got to believe that if he were to go to WCW, they'd make him take a test first.
Yeah, they haven't come out, either organization hasn't come out and said publicly that that's what they're doing now. The steroids, yeah, but not that, not HIV. But WCW has a tremendous interest in him, and the reports I'm getting all week are that he's almost signed, sealed, and delivered, and will be there by Starrcade.
Katie, thanks for the call. Jose from the Bronx, you're on a fan.
Yes, hi, good morning, guys. A quick question. Doesn't matter what they do, Rick, in WCW, they have to change the public, the people that go to the shows.
Yeah.
They don't even clap, they don't even give any emotion to the program.
Yeah. Well, you know, the television has improved. The Clash of Champions was a big improvement, and you're watching some of their shows, except I think the show here in the New York market on Saturday night, late, I still think is a terrible television production. But what I think they're doing is they want to do more. They're very concerned about the TV because, number one, that's a market to get people to go to the shows. Number two, that's where their revenue is going to come in, and I think that's what their emphasis is right now. And I don't think they're really concerned about what's happening in the arenas because they're cutting down on those shows anyway.
But Rick, and Saturday mornings, they had the WCW. Now they switched it to 12:30 midnight.
They switched it to 12:30 because that's the only time slot they could get here in the New York market once WPIX took them off. And they went to WCBS Channel 2. They had no other option to stay in the New York market. They had to take that time.
All right, Jose, thanks for the call. Joe from Camden's on the fan. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you?
Very good, very good. I have a question and a comment. Rich.
Yes.
Is this going to be the shortest reign in WWF history? Is Hogan going to get his belt back one day?
I can't make a prediction. I may know more tomorrow. I tried to find out definite plans tonight, but everybody seems to think that Piper is going to be involved in this and will be there instead of Hogan and take the belt. Then there's talk that Jack Tunney will uphold this belt because of another interference tactic by Ric Flair.
Right.
If you really want to ask me right now, what I think is going to happen is that this belt is going to be upheld,
right,
and they're going to go to another tournament, which I think is disastrous. I don't think they should do that.
Please.
And Ric Flair will gain it, and then at the Royal Rumble, he'll have it probably at the Royal Rumble, and then he'll come back to WrestleMania, and Hogan will take it from Flair at WrestleMania. I think that's what's going to happen, but don't count on it, because it seems to be changing every minute.
Joe, thanks for the call. Eddie from Suffern's on the fan. Hi, Ed.
Hey, Rich, hey, Jody, how you guys doing tonight?
Good.
All right, I have a comment and a question. One thing, I agree with you guys 100%. I think the WWF is kind of like selling Ric Flair short. I mean, they're including him in Survivor Series, you know, tag team matches and stuff like that. Second of all, Hulk Hogan was on the Regis show a couple weeks ago. And he said, Regis said, who are you going to be your upcoming opponents? He says, I'm going to take out The Undertaker, Ric Flair, and Randy Savage in that order. Do you see Randy Savage turning bad at all?
No. But not after what they've done.
Yeah, they've gone through so much.
I can't possibly see that happening, not after what they've done. It would kill them tremendously if they did that.
Don't see it happening, Eddie, neither do I. Vinny from Edison, our last wrestling caller of the morning. Hi, Vinny, you're on FAN.
How you doing, Jody and Rich?
Good.
Rich, I want to make a point about the real world champion, Ric Flair. As Jody knows, me and my friends, tremendous fans of the Nature Boy, and you know, anybody with two eyes and a brain in their head could realize that for the last 10 years, he's been by far the most dominating and you know, the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vinny.
And you know, just put him in the ring with Hogan. You know, I don't see this as a dream match. I see it as an insult.
Yeah.
And I agree. I don't like what they're doing with him. I don't like how they're pushing him. And my question to you is, how could you run a pay-per-view show on December 3rd and not even have him wrestle?
Well, originally, see, there's another thing. Originally, they had advertised in San Antonio for the crowd there that the match that night would be Ric Flair against Hulk Hogan. That was supposed to be the match. But again, Eddie, they turned everything around. When Sid Justice got injured, they had to change all their plans. So now they're making Ric Flair the man that's taking the belt away from Hulk Hogan. He's going to be involved Tuesday night. What he's going to do, I don't know. But he's not matched up to wrestle against anybody, but he's going to play a role in that match.
Right. Okay, can I ask you one more question?
Make it quick, Vinny, we're out of here.
Okay, I heard about the Legion of Doom being unhappy in the WWF is ranking to it.
Excuse me?
I heard Legion of Doom is unhappy with their situation in WWF.
No, that's totally untrue. They're very happy. And if you heard anything about them being unhappy, maybe because there's contemplation about them dropping the belt from the natural disasters in January at the Royal Rumble, which is possible. That could happen, but they could regain it. And if they do lose, it's because WWF has got their eyes on the Steiner brothers.
Okay, thank you.
Vinny, thanks for the call. Always a pleasure to talk to a member of Bag O' Cheese. Richie, any local matches coming up?
Yeah, we have some major independent action in the area. Next weekend, Dennis Caruso has a match in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. Bob Backlund against Jerry Lawler. And December 11th, the following evening in Clemington, New Jersey, Backlund and Dick Murdoch. But the big news is this new federation, the American Wrestling Federation, will be staging two big shows. There's the weekend of December 13th, December 14th and 15th. The 14th, Asbury Park, New Jersey, at the Convention Hall at 7:30. 10 great matches. The main event, Nikita Koloff against Paul Orndorff. Kamala against Norman. The Original Sheik and Sabu versus Ronnie Garvin and the Cheetah Kid. Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, Dirty White Boy against Sonny Beach and Jeff Gaylord. Hercules Ayala's on the card. Rock and Roll Express, Robert Gibson, Jeff Jarrett against Bob Orton and Barry Horowitz. Also, Dutch Mantel will be on the show. I am Mike Sharp. And then they're coming into Lowell, Massachusetts the next night for fans up there on the 16th. Rather, it's Monday night, the 16th, 7:30, with the same stars. And they're going to have a world television title. And they're going to be on a major cable network. We'll have more on this federation next week.
Sounds good, Richie. Sounds like they do have some good wrestlers. Those are some good cards. Another good show. Thank you much. Hope your Thanksgiving was a good one. We'll talk to you next week.
Jody, as always, you and the great fans out there. We'll talk to you next week. I'm sure we'll have more on this Hogan situation. Keep it in the ring.
Rich Mancuso here with us on FAN. Closey's got the update. We're into our final hour.